All the investors told me this idea is stupid, it's too expensive, too complex when I started working because I was only 19. So I actually started as a dealer in a land-based casino. So I was dealing roulette, blackjack. Now I was an immigrant that came with 200 pounds in her pocket to UK. It was non-stop. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I still have PTSD because there were more difficult moments than there were easy moments in the journey. So instead of that, think, what if you fly? If you're going to focus on failure, you're going to fail. And there were more people saying, Karolina, this is an impossible task. But I never believed that. I was always like, watch me, let's see. If you work hard, if you give it your all, luck is going to find you eventually. But if you're going to sit there and wait for luck, well, probably not. So one is obviously make your own luck. Luck doesn't meet you still, you engineer your own serendipity. But to eventually arrive at the place of such confidence that she knew that this time she's not going to fall, she's going to fly.
Bienvenidos a Networking 365. Hoy estamos con una invitada muy especial. Le tenemos que agradecer que haya venido en el día de hoy. Es una invitada que se dedica al mundo del juego, además en distintas modalidades. En el mundo del juego online, en la actualidad, pero también en el mundo del juego en relación con locales físicos y con casinos físicos. Nos va a contar un poco su historia y va a ser muy interesante y esperamos que os guste. Además de ser una persona que trabaja para las casas de apuestas, que nosotros llevamos muchos procedimientos para casas de apuestas, para los jugadores de casas de apuestas, ha escrito un libro que se llama Play. Es muy interesante, es sobre el emprendimiento en relación además con el mundo femenino y además en relación con el tema de que no hay que tener tanta suerte en la vida, sino que hay que trabajar y trabajar duro. Es Karolina Pelc. Muchas gracias por venir. Thank you so much for coming, Karolina.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay. The first question: how was your beginnings in the game wars?
So my beginnings are quite interesting because I didn't start in online. I don't think online existed in the current form when I started working because I was only 19. So I actually started as a dealer in a land-based casino. So I was dealing roulette, blackjack. I also worked on the cruise ships from there, but I spent a good 5 years not even thinking I would be working in online. It just as a way to pay for university. So I never expected for this to develop into sort of online gaming career at all.
So you were croupier?
I was a croupier, yeah.
For how long?
5 years. I was 1 year in Poland, then I worked in London in the members clubs, and then I spent almost 3.5 years on Royal Caribbean cruise ships.
And what did you learn about the behavior of the people watching them?
That's the thing. I think working in land-based casino was probably one of the most important lessons that I could bring into online, because most people working in online, they have to learn the player psychology from books or spreadsheets or data, but I've seen it up close at the tables. I think the main thing I learned was that the risk in gaming isn't strategic, it's emotional, even for people who think it's strategic. There's always an element of emotion that will change their decision at the very last moment, despite what they think they're going to do. And I think the second biggest thing I've learned was that there's a big difference between players who treat gaming, gambling as entertainment, and those who treat it as ways of making income. And these two groups are very distinct, and they need to be treated very, very differently as customers.
And do you think what you've learned about the people while you were croupier was useful in your life?
100%. My career in online started in marketing. So the fact that I knew the end user was very helpful when we were designing campaigns and so on. But I think really when I started building products, which was good 10 years into my career when I was working at Leo Vegas, we built the fastest growing live casino out there. And it was the very first live casino on mobile. So my experience from actual land-based casino, where I've seen how the tables looks, how dealers should behave, how dealers should interact with players, was very, very useful. And we were the pioneers of that experience at the time with Leo. And most importantly, it was what inspired my startup, because BeyondPlay was a technology technology that enabled people to play together. Slots is a very solitary, alienating experience where you just play against yourself and a screen of the phone. And I wanted to recreate that atmosphere and the feeling of sharing your wins, but also your losses and your emotions with other people. So if I didn't work in land-based casino, if I didn't work on the cruise ships where people were watching each other play, spectating, high-fiving, sending each other drinks to celebrate, I don't think that idea would have come to me, you know?
How did you do you remember how do you first recreated in your mind your this BeyondPlay? Do you
I
remember?
remember it very clearly, and I remember I have a photographic memory. I have a neurodiverse brain, and I remember what posters were in Piccadilly Circus 20 years ago when I was taking a bus to work. So I definitely remember the moment, and it was actually an interesting story because I was sitting with one of my casino managers at the time. We were at a conference in Amsterdam. It was still good 5 years before I founded the company. I was director of gaming back then for Leo Vegas. And he was saying to me that he needs to finish dinner fast because he's going on a Tinder date. And I've never seen Tinder because it bypassed, my generation. So I asked him to show me because I was really interested in how the product works. So he started to show me the features and everything. And we kind of played around with it and decided, we should replicate some of this in our mobile app because some of these features are really cool. And I asked him, but do you not get bored of meeting people on Tinder? Would you not want to meet them in real life? And he said, no, because in my generation, no one does that anymore. We spend our evenings playing together games. We play slots together. And I said, how do you play slots together? You can't play it together. It's designed for one-person interaction. And he explained to me that what they do is they all deposit money together. They transfer it to each other by Revolut or something. One person deposits, and then they have the phone, and each one of them takes a turn at taking a couple of spins. And when they win, then they split the money with Revolut. And I remember sitting there right after looking at all those innovative features from the dating app, and then him striking with that thought that him at the age of 27 back then plays with his friends, and that's the way they spend their Friday night as entertainment. The two just clicked, and I was like, right, I need to build an app where people can do this seamlessly. They can play together, they can have their losses shared together, they can have their deposits splits into their wallets simultaneously and seamlessly so that we can remove friction from this experience. So that was the moment I wanted to build it, but the technology wasn't there. I explored the concept. There wasn't enough technical capability to build something like this. It was very difficult. So I kind of abandoned it. And then good 5 years later, when I was already on my own, I had a consultancy firm. The live streaming technology started to really take off. Quality of stream and the speed that the stream could be improved so much over the past few years that I realized that live streaming could be the technology that I can use to serve the same game session to multiple players at the same time. And that's when it was not my first startup idea, but that's when I decided to do BeyondPlay.
Because BeyondPlay, you started it during the pandemic era.
Yes, right before.
So it was helpful to you, the special situation during the pandemic.
It was because I had a different idea. I had a stab at a startup sometime November before the year that the pandemic started, but that failed miserably. All the investors told me this idea is stupid, it's too expensive, too complex. Nobody will ever take this product live. But they all told me, but we really like you in the founder role. You tick a lot of boxes. You should do something different. And that's when I went back to that original idea from the 5 years before. And I did the technical assessment of what we can do. And I started raising money. Well, I was still working on the deck, but I was identifying the investors. And then the pandemic hit. And I thought initially, okay, great. So I just left my job. And now I'm not going to get another one because it's pandemic. No one is hiring because people are living in this big uncertainty. And I have this startup that I'm supposed to go and raise money, but we can't travel and is generally like lockdown and I don't think anybody's investing. But because pandemic was all about people finding entertainment online together because they miss the togetherness that the lockdown, strip away from them. Investors instantly got it when I was explaining to them that I want people to play together, because I was referring to my product as the Peloton of slots. I was saying, look, people are signing up for Peloton classes. There is 200 or 300 concurrent players riding bicycles to Backstreet Boys at the same time. Why do you think there's not going to be 200 slots players that want to play the same game while they're stuck at home and they have no other form of entertainment and interacting with people? And look at the streamers, how fast they are growing. All these things were adding up, so that when I started raising money, we kind of secured investment pretty quick and of a pretty early stage, because it was a deck really at that point. No team, no advisors, just an idea.
How many guys did you meet that said, nah, this is a stupid idea? How many?
So before I actually started raising money, I made quite a few. And during the race, actually, maybe there were people, but I don't know if it shows, but I'm a little bit intimidating. So not a lot of people have enough courage to tell me in my face that my idea is stupid. So they might have been saying this behind my back, but not to me directly. But to be honest, we pitched probably 15, 20 investors, and we did close the investment within 6 months of the 3 biggest ones of them. So people did think it was a good idea. Further down the line, we heard a lot of criticism because the way to build this product was extremely complex, and we were facing a lot of dependency on game providers. We had to have them sign contracts with us. So as we were building the company, there were more people saying, Karolina, this is an impossible task. You're never going to succeed. And when you add licensing to this and all the KYC on investment, people were telling you're going to fail. This is not going the places where you're going to want to go. But I never believed that. I was always like, watch me. Let's see.
And it was your goal from the beginning to sell your company, BeyondPlay. It was your goal from the beginning, before you created it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I never had a goal to sell it in under 3 years. I would be, I am a little bit delusional, but not that much. So I thought it's going to be a very long process. But, I worked in M&A for long enough before, because I was in M&A advisory roles at all the corporate jobs that I had. And then when I had my consultancy, I also advised on quite a few transactions within the industry. So I knew what kind of companies were being bought, and I knew what's needed to be attractive to the seller. So maybe it was less of a fact that I founded the company to get it sold, but it was more, I'm going to build the company in the way that I don't have to deal with all these troubles that those founders have when they're trying to sell. So it was very sellable from the beginning. And I had a very strong idea of who the buying market could be. Because again, my industry expertise and years in the industry, I knew the dynamics, I knew who is buying, I knew who is buying what. So that was very, very helpful to have a very clear vision of what I wanted to achieve with the company.
Okay. And why did you look for American market, not for European market? There were any reason, or was just
if I'm completely honest, maybe a little bit of ego, because we did go after the European market. So we started there, but we were always very focused on regulated markets. So we had plenty of opportunity in gray markets, crypto, and emerging markets and so on. But we knew that the moment we go down that route, we're going to complicate things for ourselves, because then there's company structures needed and multiple different locations. And we wanted to stay clear from that. We didn't manage fully, but we stayed clear. And then I wanted a global brand to launch the product, because multiplayer technology needs liquidity. It needs large volumes of players to play together to really show the value of it, So I was always looking at the US, that Europe is very fragmented and the brands are not operating across borders, right? You have UK licensing, Malta licensing, and you cannot connect those groups of players together. In the US, the area was a bit gray, so there wasn't a definition of what licensing regime we fall underneath. And at the beginning, we had a strong belief that they will allow share liquidity, similarly with poker. They didn't in the end, but that was the idea. That's why we went after US customers, pitching our product from the beginning.
Okay, and all this reasoning was in your thoughts from the first moment?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, quite impressive.
Thank you.
Muy bien, pues hasta aquí una primera parte de este podcast tan interesante. Muchísimas gracias por haber venido. Carolina, te voy a dejar en buenas manos con Javier y con Daniel Palacios. Muchas gracias, thank you so much, y nos vemos en otra ocasión.
So, Carolina, in some moment you found it was difficult for you to fight in a world, I think, dominated with men in the business world, or you thought in some moment it was hard, it was difficult, or
No.
really no?
I actually didn't, but I think, and I talk about it a lot, and this is why I put myself in the spotlight these days, because I think not a lot of women are like me, and some of them do find that word intimidating, alienating to some extent. But I actually, first, never found it difficult. Secondly, I never faced discrimination. I always had equal opportunity. I actually think that the fact that I worked in a heavily male-dominated industry, and in land-based, it's not just your co-workers, but also the customers are all male, and a lot of them are very friendly, especially in Eastern Europe. I think that helped me become quite strong and opinionated and not be intimidated. And then my career was in marketing at the beginning, but then I switched to product and tech somewhere halfway through. So again, developers, CTOs, and very male world. So when I entered the startup world and investors were really the women, you can count them on fingers of one hand, I was so used to it for so many years that I didn't even notice it. So I think it was very helpful to have that journey gradually. And I think it was very helpful to me to know how to speak with men and how not to show weakness and how to stand my own ground, rather than being shy and putting myself in a different position of power. Definitely helpful lesson.
Something that for me is the most amazing point is how you achieve to pass all the steps from building your own company, from being in the land-based casino as a croupier, and pass all the bureaucracy and all the government regulations to build something that, as you said before, most of the people say it not was going to be successful. And can you explain more about this to us?
I think that part, because I always say in my startup journey, there were two extremely difficult parts that almost broke me. One of them was managing people, because I never managed people at that scale. I managed bigger teams than 50, but they were never reporting directly to me. And as a founder, even though you have layers of, reporting, they still think they report to you. So I like to think that my open door policy with people ended up with an open door policy between me and my therapist, because they offloaded so much drama on me. Now, the second most difficult part was the licensing part. The decision to go in regulated markets and the decision to build big brand awareness and use my personal brand behind it from the beginning meant we couldn't fly below the radar. So even though there was no legal definition for our product, for the multiplayer technology, we couldn't really risk it and try to launch it with the likes of Leo Vegas, Come On, William Hill, without the license, because we didn't want to make them liable. And obviously they wouldn't make themselves liable either. So we had to go down the licensing route. And this was extremely tough because we couldn't just fill out template documentation. There was questions flying back and forth between us and the regulator. And, in the UK, it's not possible to speak directly to the regulator to ask them questions in advance. Once you submit the licensing documentation, you wait for months until they come back to you and say, actually, there's something wrong in the way you split your projections, because this is a casino host license and this is a casino provider license. It was impossible to distinguish. So licensing processes have eaten up majority of our runway from the first race, and we didn't expect that. And then the second layer of that was the fact that once you're a licensed company every penny that comes to your business is scrutinized to the level that most people don't understand. And this was difficult because we had a big interest from VC investors, from family offices, even those that normally don't invest in gaming, and because of the nature of the industry, they found it as kind of borderline, and it had a responsible gaming element, and they liked the diversity of the company, so they were willing to make an exception. But it was always the same story. We would tell them how detailed the process of source of funds is going to be. And they would be like, yeah, we've done it. We've done the licensing in New Jersey, fingerprints and all. And we were like, no, you have not done a simultaneous investigation of the source of funds between US, Malta, and UK when it's literally a breadcrumb trail, right? And this was discouraging investors. Once we got them on the calls with lawyers, and the lawyers would tell them how deep we're going to go, they just were backing out. And not because the money wasn't clean, just because of the level of effort that it required from them. And we had investors complaining about the costs on their side that were being generated by their accountancy firms and having to provide statements. And, at some point, there was information requested on specific LPs from VC, which is not standard practice outside of our industry. Normally, if you're LP, you've already done your checks, and you don't need to be bothered with personal questions. Gaming regulator doesn't care about that because they're so protective of, to make sure that the money comes from reputable sources. And this was also why I think I decided to sell the company when I was approached for acquisition, because I knew I could take the company 10 times higher, when it comes to valuation. I knew that the product will eventually work. I knew that the jackpots had a very strong growth trajectory, but I was worried that I'm not going to raise money in the next round because of that complexity with investment. I was worried that no one is going to want to go through the process, and I'm going to have a great company with great trajectory, sales, product, demand, but I'm not going to have the money to keep the lights on. So when the acquisition offer came through and it was really good, I was like, okay, let's go for it. That's the easiest path of still seeing something amazing happening and not pulling my hair out worrying if I'm going to have enough money for salaries for people in 6 months.
Okay, so you have to change and adapt to your goals in order to achieve that success. And most important, when you have to keep the company once you achieve your goals, no? Your new goals.
It was, yes, absolutely. You have to pivot in your expectations, and you have to manage expectations of everyone, because obviously, less than 3 years, the return on investment for some investors that came 6 months before wouldn't have been what they expected, although it still was a very good return on such a short amount of time that the capital was held, right? But you have to consider what's going to happen to the team. Is the team going to be on board of it? Which is why we had 3 different acquisition conversations in parallel, because once the first one started, I didn't want to have all my eggs in one basket. So I actively searched for other people that could give me leverage in that negotiation. And you know how it works. It's like there's FOMO. So once I said to someone, hey, there is someone that might want to buy us, and I'm thinking you might want to also be in that game. They're like, yes, of course, we will. So that was helpful. But really, this was only this buyer that I wanted, because I knew that they will, at least for a certain amount of time, protect my people. I knew that they're going to put the biggest effort before launching the technology. And I wanted my product live on the #1 gaming brand in the US. That was I already pivoted from wanting to see the multiplayer live, because that was the initial goal. But here, at least I knew the jackpots are going to be live. They're going to be supported by a multi-million-dollar campaign. And I'm going to be able to sit there and watch a TV ad and go, I made that. I built that, So it was hard, but eventually we got what we wanted out of it.
Amazing.
Okay. Most personal question. Do you remember any difficult moment, especially difficult moment in all this process? Or
Absolutely. I mean, I still have PTSD. That's why I'm not doing another startup anytime soon, because there were more difficult moments than there were easy moments in the journey. It was all difficult. It was, we were growing really, really fast. I started alone, then we were 6, 12, 25, 50 within the space of 3 years. And managing that growth, constantly recruiting, building product, doing marketing, doing your personal brand marketing, because I was traveling to all the conferences to make people aware of the company. I was the main person behind selling together with the COO. And then on top of that, raising investment, that became a 24/7 job. That was not your 9 to 5. That was not your 9 to 10. It was non-stop. I would wake up in the middle of the night to try to reorganize my to-do list because I was scared I'm not going to have enough time the next day to do anything. So it was all hard. I think the hardest moments were probably the moments where we thought we're not going to get the license, because that would have been it. That would have been the end of it, because if the Gaming Commission said, like, this product is unlicensable, we would have to close down shop. And I think another difficult moment was, exit of one of our investors, because their circumstances changed and they were acquired. So we had to find a buyer for their shares while already searching for capital for our own needs. So these were hard moments. And I think the fact that this all happened in just 3 years made the journey harder, but it also gave me enough things to talk about for the next 10 years, So I look at this and laugh right now, but if you ask me to take a startup CEO position tomorrow at a gaming startup, I'd be like, very nice, thank you, but no. Yeah, stay clear.
And after, sorry.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Por favor.
Okay. Well, we see that most of the people, when don't know the story behind the success, always thinks that it's luck. And now we are listening all the effort and the difficulties you have to surpass. Well, that's something amazing that most of the time no one know. And well, it's a great story.
I think that's why I wrote the book, because that's exactly when I heard people talking behind my back that I got lucky, and I knew how much work went in there, not just in the startup, but also in the 20 years before. Because, again, I started when I was 19. I quit university twice. I lived in 7 different countries. I moved every time there was an opportunity. I was an immigrant that came with 200 pounds in her pocket to UK. When someone tells me I got lucky when I sold the company without that context, it's almost rude, right? So I'm also trying to tell people the luck is there and plays part in everyone's success. As lawyers, you will know that sometimes you also win cases because of an element of luck. But is that luck alone? No. It's all the preparation and all the hard work that you put in, that when that element of luck lands, it's received with the right circumstances, right? So that's what the purpose of the book is, to tell people, if you work hard, if you give it your all, luck is going to find you eventually. But if you're going to sit there and wait for luck, well, probably not.
It's going to pass through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, I was just to ask you if after all this Odyssey, are you thinking about creating other startups, or are you thinking about it?
Listen, once a founder, always a founder. Once a builder, always a builder. So for sure, I will build more products. I have ideas all the time. I consciously stay clear from that because I am so tired from my career. I never had a break since the 19 until I sold the company, not even for my maternity. I probably took 4 months off, And the book was supposed to be a hobby, pet project, but this became a business and a startup of its own, and there's so much happening around it with marketing and PR and actual ecosystem being built that it still means I didn't take a break. So I think I need to finish that project, then take a break if I'm even capable of such thing, because I'm not sure. And definitely eventually I will build more things. At the moment, what I find fulfillment is working with other startups. So I do invest, I do mentor, and I do get involved with other founders. And I guess being able to jump in the stuff I love, which is product, company setup, and working on the founder's mindset, by stay clear from the HR drama and all the bad parts of the startup, because it's not mine, is what I enjoy more at the moment than having to do it all.
Okay. Can you advance us any idea?
Absolutely. I've been giving ideas, and actually one of my strongest ideas is in the capital raising space, because I've been advocating for democratizing access to capital. I think that money raising processes need a dating app. And I think there should be more equality between founders and investors and more transparency, because one of the biggest issues I found managing my time was that I didn't know what investors were looking for. I didn't know who wanted to lead, who wanted to be a second one in. I didn't know the size of the tickets. I didn't know their terms. I would like to have a website in which I can literally enter the filters of, I'm looking for an investor that can back an existing lead that is going to agree to the following terms and conditions, and they have the following portfolio companies that could benefit mine, and they have a woman as an investor or on their board. And I would like it to spit it out an access of who I should target as a founder, right? And I think the VCs and investors should also be able to do similar things. So I think the technology has not entered the VC and private capital space to the level that it should, especially now that we have AI. So I think if no one steals this idea or makes it better, I would love to build something like that in future.
We found a new app to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I missed one question before. Do you think benefits in the gambling industry is higher than in other investments, in other sectors, other investment? Do you think so or not?
Do you mean the industry is better to invest in than other sectors? I don't know. I don't think so anymore. I think there was a period of time where it was such high growth and high return investment environment. But at the moment it's tricky because there are a lot of trends that are showing up and they're very short term. You know, the social sweepstakes sort of space, the prediction markets. No one really knows how the regulation around it is going to evolve and how this is going to impact the big players versus the newcomers. So I think for someone to expect, returns in 6-7 years, that's a very tricky place to be in. If you are looking to place your money somewhere for 6 months and then take it out when it grows fast, maybe. But I think it's a volatile investment environment. And in terms of those proven bets and the game studios that everybody kept investing in and buying, that market is saturated. And I don't think there is a lot of space for innovation and someone coming in and doing something completely differently and much better than others. So
probably your next move in investments, in your ideas, will be not the gambling industry.
No, definitely not. And it's actually interesting because my expertise is in that industry. So I do advise others of where I think things go or what I think of certain companies. But I find fulfillment in learning something new. And I only invest in startups where I'm an advisor as well, so I'm exposed to it. And I really like AI first companies, especially the ones with like really defensible products and amazing founders. And I like impact companies. These are not the strongest investments, but I feel, I want to, maybe because of my background as well, I want to be involved in things that actually make the world a better place. Because let's be honest, working in the gaming industry, I wasn't exactly doing that. So I now kind of like to pour my attention in places that really help people to some extent. And I invest in female founders as well, which is my way of paying it forward. So that's more interesting for me.
Okay.
So, and something of this hard work to prepare the lucky points on your strategy, had prepared yourself for the next startups or business that are in your mind?
Well, first of all, I would take a long break. And I think the main things that I would put in place is I would make sure that I am an absolute master in everything AI, because I think AI gives such unbelievable opportunity to founders that use it right to go at speed that never seen before. But the problem is that it's being given to everyone. So you cannot just be average in it. You have to be like master of it to get ahead of others. And I think that can cut a lot of unnecessary expenses for you, because I wouldn't get a CTO for my startup at this point. I probably wouldn't get developers for the first MVP iteration, which was a massive cost at the beginning and massive distraction to hire and so on. I would just do it in Claude, but the second part is I would definitely delegate more, and I would put a big barrier between myself and the team. Because even though I always felt like it needs to be a team, it needs to be open, transparent, and you need to be almost like, a mother to them, that I know is the biggest risk to your focus, and it's the biggest risk to your mental health, to have too many people pouring out their expectations, their frustrations onto you. So I would manage just top executive level and never build such a close relationship. Even though I value those relationships and I'm still friends with a lot of people from my team, I never again want to be a shoulder to cry on for anyone else.
Okay. I would ask to you if you have to choose a message to let to any person hearing you, which can be thinking about creating business or something like that. What will you say to a person? What would it be your advice?
So there are three, and they're very easy for me. It's quite hard to stay away from them or change them because I kind of made them permanent. So one is obviously make your own luck. Luck doesn't meet you still. You engineer your own serendipity. That's one message. The other two, I have them tattooed on me, so I can't even, hide that these are my mottos. So this one means illegitimate non carborundum. It's in Latin, so maybe in Spanish you can try to figure out what that means.
Easy to understand, I think. Illegitimate?
Illegitimate non carborundum.
Non carborundum.
It means don't let the bastards grind you down.
Okay.
But luckily, this is not about people. It's about feelings. So fear, self-limiting belief, doubt, don't let it grind you down. Just overcome it, because these are the biggest barriers for potential, the biggest barriers of success. Nothing else. No external factors, no people, these three feelings. If you overcome them, then you can probably overcome everything else. And the second message is, here I've got it, what if you fly? And this is the reframe on every time you're standing on the edge and trying to take a big risk and jump. If you're going to be looking down and if you're going to be thinking, what if I fall? You're going to activate the wrong part of your brain and you're going to activate the wrong hormonal response. So instead of that, think, what if you fly? Because that is going to help you to make that decision to take the risk, because your brain is going to react completely differently. So in short, this is literally projecting your own success, because your brain will then push you towards achieving that success. If you're going to focus on failure, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. So these are my messages, and I live and breathe by them. As I said, I wouldn't have put them on my own body if I didn't. And they seemed like cliches for a bit, and I thought they only appealed to me. But I've been giving this as an advice to many founders, and I know this resonates greatly. And I really know simple switch of mindset to these phrases can really help to move forward, push the needle, and get rid of fear. That is a big blocker in entrepreneurship.
And did you get to those phrases by yourself, or
So this one was left as a sticky note on my laptop from my boss 10 years ago. And I used to carry the sticky note with me to every new job. And eventually in the startup, things got so hard that I decided to ink it. And this one is from a poem by an Australian young poet, which was written, and I use it from there. But I also give myself an answer. So this one asks you, don't let the bastards grind you down. And when I sold the company, I didn't. Future is mine. Wow. So I validated my own sort of fight against the bastards.
Okay, I think one final question. If you could go back to your early days, what would you tell your younger self? Your actual Karolina, what would you?
I wouldn't tell her anything. And this is the same answer to, if you could have a time machine, would you change anything in your life? I would tell her absolutely nothing, and I would have changed absolutely nothing in my life or career, because I think everything that you think, say, or happens to you happens for a reason. And if you were going to go back and give some level of advice or change certain circumstances, that would derail the whole journey and all synchronicity of it, how it go. I think everybody needs to experience is your greatest teacher. So there is no piece of advice that I could have given her. She probably wouldn't listen because I know myself. So it would be a waste of my own energy, right? She needed to go through all those steps and experience the hard-ass falls and all the different situations in which she had to come on top to eventually arrive at the place of such confidence that she knew that this time she's not going to fall. She's going to fly. So I would leave everything as is and I would let her figure it all out on her own.
Okay.
Great answer.
So if you have any other question, no? Okay. Karolina, so thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. You have told us a lot of things. That's quite amazing for our people. So we are very thankful to you for this hour. Or
I hope your audience finds this useful. I haven't told you 10% of my story, so I do recommend for people to read the book because it's got a lot of. It's not a book about me, mind you. It's important to highlight that this is full of advice on mindset. It's a lot of challenging of different thought leadership concepts around neuroscience, epigenetics, and things like that. So you're not reading a story of some girl. You're reading a book that will really teach you things. Unfortunately, it's not available in Spanish just yet, but I do plan to have it translated at the same time as I'm going to learn Spanish myself. But it's available on Amazon and comes out 9th of June.
Okay, so bueno, paso al español. Pues espero que os haya gustado a todos este rato maravilloso que hemos tenido con Karolina. Nos ha abierto su corazón, nos ha contado absolutamente todo lo que le hemos preguntado sobre ella, sin reservas, y bueno, pues esperamos que os haya sido de utilidad. Y bueno, y no os olvidéis.
No creo la suerte.
No creo la suerte.
La construye.
Aquí está todo lo que nos ha contado, ampliado, en Amazon. Muchas gracias y hasta otra.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Karolina.
Thank you.